Hello and welcome to Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton. It's a cold, crisp London morning and I'm in my car today, so a slightly different format. Probably sounds like I'm locked up in a small box somewhere. But, normally I record this podcast, the kind of intro when I'm out and about in London or around the world or wherever I am. And today I'm in my car, so there you go. And it's hands-free, so we'll see if it works. Different format. Very excited about today's guest. You've probably heard me talking about tapping before. Tapping's been massively important for me. This is emotional freedom therapy, and it's something that I thought was a little bit too out there for me when I heard about it. But actually, it was probably the thing that helped me recover from a tropical virus that I got in the Philippines a few years ago more than anything else. Tapping, just someone tapping on my face and body. Crazy, right? And I interviewed my own personal practitioner, and we had this kind of quite personal chat about tapping. My practitioner is Ashley Meyer, and that was podcast number 105, I think, on Zestology. Since then, I've been trying to get the world's biggest expert on tapping on my podcast, Nick Ortner, and it's been quite difficult to persuade him to come on. I think he's just a busy man, and I think I emailed him about a year ago and he was like, Tony, great to hear from you. Too busy to do this right now, but stay in touch. And so I did stay in touch, and a year later he's come on Zestology, which is excellent. And actually he was a very nice chap as well. Nick Ortner has millions of followers on social media, and tapping is one of those things that is starting to get a lot more interest in the areas of PTSD, recoveries from kind of mental health illness, but especially physical health symptoms. So if you've got a sore throat or a headache, listen on. Seriously, Nick Ortner would say, listen on, because there's stuff you can do. And in this podcast, we're going to chat a little bit about tapping, and then we're going to have a live tapping demo. So if you're listening to this in your car, you'll be able to listen to about 20 minutes, and then you will really want to carry on. But unfortunately, you'll have to wait to do the end bit until you stop driving. So that is today's podcast, and it is drawing close to the year here in London. I'm very excited because I am lucky enough to be, you probably remember last year, or at the start of this year, I spoke quite a lot on Zestology about my month away. I went to Seattle, Tokyo and Bali, and I went to 40 years of Zen. And I'm doing it again. Off in January for a month, and we are going to northern Thailand and doing a few, don't worry, I'll record podcasts on the way. Some of the stuff we're doing is very exciting. There's a bit of downtime, a bit of R&R in there as well, but some of the stuff we're doing is very exciting, including we're going to this monastery near the Burmese border, and it's a kind of meditation retreat which is run by Thai Buddhist monks, and it's such that Westerners like me can kind of blunder in there, and these monks will kind of kindly take you under their wing, and they don't charge you anything, but at the end they say, look, if you'd like to donate for your experience, then that would be great, which is very exciting. So it's basically a meditation retreat, and we're going to go there. It's not totally Vipassana, so it's not totally silent, but I think there's about 6 hours of silent a day, and then there's loads of chanting, which is good because I like chanting. I've always felt like I'm quite good at chanting. Anything which involves kind of talking or using my voice. So that's going to be an excellent experience, and we've got a couple of other courses going on as well. And actually, I guess if you are in northern Thailand and you listen to this podcast, bit of a long shot, but might well be someone. If you're in northern Thailand right now and you're thinking, hang on, this is pretty near where Tony's coming pretty soon, do let me know, because I think we'll be in northern Thailand for quite a bit, and very excited about that. So that's coming up. Of course, it will be chronicled in the podcast. Enough of me in my car. Let's head over to the world's tapping, the world's probably top acknowledged tapping authority, Nick Ortner. Nick, how you doing?
Hey Tony, it is so good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you as well, because I have admired your work from afar for quite some time. Regular listeners to my podcast know that not only am I a big fan of tapping, but it's had a huge impact on my life. Really significant. So you've been on my wish list Nick.
Well, it's good to be here with you. I make wishes come true.
Yeah. Well, yes. What was your journey kind of into tapping? Because I think a lot of my listeners know how I kind of got ill and I was super stressed and all the kind of conventional medicine that I tried didn't work out. What about you? How did you kind of end up down this path of being probably the world's most celebrated and well-known tapping expert?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not what I set out to do. I was, let's see, 2003 maybe, so 13, 14 years ago, where I first discovered tapping, EFT, emotional freedom techniques. And like most things these days, I was clicking on one link and another, and I kept hearing about this tapping thing. And I thought it was weird. I still think it's weird. I still laugh when I think about waking up every morning. Yeah. What I do is share this technique where we are tapping on endpoints of meridians, and somehow this thing transforms people's lives. But yeah, I heard about it, and at first I thought it was weird. But you hear about something enough times, you go, all right, you got to try it. And I did. I started using it. I started using it on little things and big things. One of the stories I often tell is waking up one morning with a crick in my neck from, sleeping wrong, wrestling a bear. Who knows what you do in the middle of the night to wake up in pain. And I had heard about how tapping works for pain relief. So I said, all right, let me try this. And I did, and went through the points, looking at it online. I do this, I do that. And then the pain released. I think that was one of my first experiences where I said, there's something going on here, to wake up in pain, to be in a situation where, you'd normally be in pain for a day or two, or you pop an Advil, or you try to stretch it around, the traditional ways of coping with these challenges in our lives. You mentioned the traditional medical system, the ways like, okay, I guess a pill will help this somehow. And then doing this tapping thing changed it and released it. So, my first instinct with it was just to share it with friends and family. The running joke at the time was, don't say anything is wrong around Nick because he will make you tap on it.
That's brilliant.
Tony, I'm sure you're the same way, right? When you're passionate about something and
you want to tell everyone about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, this happened to you and you're sad and upset or angry or in pain. Well, try this tapping thing. I know it's strange, but just try it. And from there, that passion led to this crazy idea to make a documentary film about tapping. That I started that project in 2007, in the winter of 2007, with no filmmaking experience, no equipment, no team, no money. It was just, The Secret had been out around then, and I said, well, why don't we make The Secret for tapping? Why don't we I love The Secret. It's a great movie. And guess what? This tapping thing works even better because it can actually get to the core of what's happening and help people in their lives immediately. So I set off with my younger sister, Jessica, one of my best friends, Nick Palizzi, and we made this film. A year later, in 2008, we put out this documentary, 90-minute film showing the results of tapping, showing people going through the process, showing experts like Jack Canfield and Cheryl Richardson, Bob Proctor, Dr. Joe Mercola, using this technique and explaining how they used it in their lives and how powerful it was. And, as they say, from 2008, the rest is history, almost a decade from when we started to what's happening now.
And I am so pleased that you're doing this because it's funny how many of my friends, since I went through some kind of pretty dark medical times, it's amazing how many of my friends I noticed, some of whom kind of go through ups and downs with their health and they just can't explain it and the doctors can't give them any answers. And others just have some kind of low-level health complaint. And I think looking at non-conventional ways of kind of healing yourself, which would be normally considered very woo-woo, but by practiced by someone who's not that woo-woo, by you, that's the secret. That's why I like your approach.
Well, look,
you lure them in by seeming so normal, and you're actually not.
Exactly. Little do they know I'm just as crazy as the rest of them. But no, look, I think if I look at my journey in the last decade, and starting with the film, and then the Tapping Solution book and our programs, everything else that we put out there, I think my role in this and what I sort of see as my mission in the world is to bring this down to to a level where people can understand it and use it and bring it into their lives. And that's something I've done a lot of thinking about, not only about how to explain it, right? How do we ground this, but also spent a lot of time the last couple of years funding research into the technique, so we can say, all right, now we have the science about it. And also, I think my next couple of years, I'm really looking deeply at how do we use it and where do we use it? How do I put it out in the world in a way that it's easy for people to use, it's something that they can bring into their lives and that they can get results with. I don't think that's a static question that says, oh, this is what tapping is and this is how you do it, and that's it. It's like, okay, where are the places where we bring it in, and what are the mediums through which we can put this out there in a way that helps people's lives?
It's interesting that you mentioned the different kind of context that you used it. Certainly I've found it can be as helpful as something like just kind of chilling out after work. And also on a much bigger level, what happened with me is I went to the Philippines and I contracted this mystery virus, and I spent a couple of months in bed and I wasn't able to go to work at Sky and I wasn't able to do any of this. And then I found someone online who specialized in chronic fatigue, and I thought, I don't know if it's fatigue or not, but I'll go and see him. And it said he uses NLP techniques, which is the stuff that I've trained in. And he also uses tapping. And I thought, I Googled it and I thought, I'm not into the tapping at all, but he's a fatigue expert, so let's go and see him. And he's a brilliant guy in London called Meyer, who I've actually interviewed on the podcast as well. And within about 10 minutes, I was really quite emotional. He was tapping on my kind of chest, and I was like, what's going on? But it almost felt like within 10 minutes, I knew I was going to be okay. And that's an incredible sensation. Saw him for a couple of years, and I don't see him anymore, but it's only been a year or so that I've not been seeing him, and I'm very, very grateful for it as well.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that in 10 minutes, something changed. And here's what happened, I think, and this is what I hear from so many people when they first try tapping. Something unlocked in your body where you finally felt hope, right? Like there was... And when you deal with mystery diseases and chronic illness and all this stuff, after a while, the thing that gets crushed is the hope. You're just like, no one has any answers for me, and I'm exhausted, and I'm trying to do my best. And, when you're feeling terrible, how much harder is it to even do these things that make a difference in our lives? Like, people can say, go exercise or eat well or, all the things that make sense. But when you don't feel well, it's 100 times harder, right? So the tapping, it wakes our body up. It unlocks these emotional challenges and the stress. And, as woo-woo as it is in terms of being different, if you go to any medical doctor and you say to them, hey, does stress play a role in X? And you could list any disease. They're going to say to you, yeah, it absolutely plays a role. They just don't know what to do about it. They don't know. I'll hear doctors say, look, my patients are all stressed out, and I know that they could be healthier if they weren't, but what am I supposed to do? We haven't developed a swallow this pill to reduce stress pill yet. So we know it plays a role. We don't know what to do about it. Tapping just goes right to the heart of the matter so quickly, so deeply, and that's what you experience in those first 10 minutes, that you turn off the amygdala. The latest research is showing how when we tap on these endpoints of meridians, we send a calming signal to the amygdala. Your body began to heal in that moment.
I think it's about time we actually explained to people who think it's all a bit woo-woo what tapping actually is. and obviously it has featured on my podcast a few times, but perhaps you could explain how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tapping is the general name. I sort of compare that to meditation being a general name for all different kinds of meditations. The form of tapping that I learned, that I base my work off of, is EFT, emotional freedom. Emotional freedom techniques. And there's TFT, which is a different form of tapping, and other things like that. And we call it tapping because we are literally physically tapping on endpoints of meridians of our body. These major endpoints of meridians, a lot of people will know or have heard of meridians in terms of the ancient Chinese acupressure and acupuncture system. This concept and research is also starting to back that up, showing that we have these energy pathways in our body. And when we tap on these major endpoints, we activate them. We send a signal, an electrical signal through them. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, what the latest research is showing is that we also send a calming signal to the amygdala in the brain, that fight or flight response center, the part of us that when we're stressed out, acts, that when we're tense, it is firing. And it's part of our ancient biology that has served us for a long time, and certainly still serves us in times of danger and real physical threats. But unfortunately, too many of us, and I know a lot of your listeners can connect to this idea that we're activating that amygdala all the time. So we get a stressful email and we're sitting at our desk and that amygdala fires. And we know that experience, right? That is the experience of stress, that amygdala firing. And the profound challenge, especially in our modern world, is that, when you get that email and it stresses you out, you're sitting down at your desk. That natural response to stress, which would be to fight, to flee, to run, to activate our bodies physically, doesn't happen. So that stress, that cortisol that jacks up in our body, guess what? It just stays stuck in our system. And when cortisol's high, we deposit more body fat. Why? Because our body says, oh, you're stressed. We should really hold on to all the fat we can because there's probably a famine coming. So, all this cascading effect from this stress response that we often don't acknowledge. When we do, this is why healing happens. This is why tapping helps you with a mystery virus, right? You think, well, what's a virus? Like, that is something that needs to be killed. No, we need to activate the body's healing response, and that's what the tapping does.
You've got 1.1 million followers on Facebook, Nick. That's very impressive. A lot of other people are buying into this tapping business as well, aren't they?
They are buying in because it works. They're buying in because, and I'm loving Facebook, especially the experience of doing Facebook Lives, just popping on there and working with people. I love the comments of people saying, I don't know what you're doing in my news feed or how you got here, but I watched you. I started doing this. And here's the best thing, Tony. I felt better, right? I felt better 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes later. I felt that result in my life. I did one last week on procrastination, and you can see the comments where people say, I had been stuck on this project for 3 months, and now I got up and did it,
Yeah.
I've been putting off this or putting off that, and now I'm taking action. Because it all comes, people say procrastination. What does that have to do with, how do you tap on procrastination? I believe that every significant challenge in our life comes back to that stress response. When we procrastinate, it's often that we're locked up, right? We think about something we want to do and it's overwhelming, or it's scary, or we tried it in the past and we failed and we decided, we're not doing this again. And it's something we think we want, but we stay stuck. The more we're in that stress response, the more we're going to stay stuck in all aspects of our lives. And, we know the equivalent when people talk about having great ideas or brainstorms or just feeling abundant and hopeful and healthy. They talk about taking a bath and being in the shower and walking in nature or exercising. And all those things have one thing in common, that stress response is off. You don't hear about the brilliant idea in the middle of the stressful workday. How often after, or during a long day, Tony, do you go, oh my God, I had the most stressful day, but I came up with 3 great ideas. It doesn't happen. So, I think whatever you're working on, the outcome, whether it be that you're trying to heal your physical body or trying to, grow in your career, or find more fulfillment, getting back to that place of peace, that's the starting point for it all.
So sometimes I do think, I do wonder whether it's the individual, whether it's tapping or something else, whether it's the individual therapy or whether it is the skill of the practitioner. Because certainly with you and with Ashley that I went to see in London, or you go and see someone like Tony Robbins, for example, someone who's an incredible communicator, you almost think what they're doing, whatever technique it is that you're asking your audience to do, almost doesn't matter as much as the fact that your incredible charisma and presence can help people heal on its own. And that is what I wonder when I went to see Ashley. I wonder whether the fact that he was such an intuitive therapist actually healed me as much as the tapping. What would you say to that? Well, look,
it's a great question, and I 100% believe that it is a component. Now, the good news is, when it comes to the tapping, people can do it on their own. They could do it with someone who is not good at it, and they could still get results. And I know that because when I started using it in 2003, I didn't have this level of skill and knowledge and awareness with it. And I remember so clearly driving to, we were just talking about baseball before, we started recording, driving to a Yankees game, which is about an hour and a half here from my house in Connecticut. And I was going with a buddy who was a big Yankees fan, and he was complaining to me that he had hurt his shoulder playing football. just playing in the backyard and how sore it was and all this thing. And I said, I just heard about this tapping thing for pain relief. Why don't you try it? And we went through it in the car. I mean, not, no presence, no emotions, just like, oh, the shoulder pain and it hurts, and just going through the motions, and the pain just went away. And he was shocked. Wow. I was shocked as I was then and continue to be. So the tapping, that physical process, did something there. And yeah, if you work with a skilled practitioner, they're going to help you go deeper. And if you work with someone who's had, a decade of experience, they're going to help you find the little intricacies. And as you mentioned, I also agree that presence, when you're in the presence of someone who's peaceful, it's that much easier to feel peaceful in our bodies. So I think all the elements come together to create that most powerful experience.
That's funny you mentioned that, actually. After I started having tapping for a couple of years, I thought, I want to learn a bit more about it. Not because I wanted to practice it with anyone else, but just because I wanted to understand the process. So I did I think it was a three day tapping course.
Yep.
Level 1 or whatever.
Yep.
The first bit. And yeah, in my own ham-fisted way, when I was practicing it on other people, it did seem to work, even though I didn't really know what I was doing, which is it was very gratifying,
It is, yeah. I mean, and to me, that's one of the exciting things about tapping as a worldwide tool. One of the things that I'm focusing on within our foundation, the Tapping Solution Foundation, is how do we bring this to places where people are traumatized, and how do we reach the far corners of the globe with this? And the questions that have to be answered there are questions around, okay, what if you have, what's the most simplest basic thing that we can teach people to do so they can train others without needing that expertise? If we're doing tapping in Central Africa, there's probably going to be a couple of steps to get to that person there. So how do we need to communicate this message? What does the protocol look like? How do we use technology? We're working on an app and other features of technology to make this available to, as I said, the far corners of the world without losing its effectiveness.
Well, one of the big questions around using technology is, Nick, can you do tapping on a podcast for people so they can try it out now?
Absolutely. And it's one of the things that I love about it.
Thank goodness.
Yes, I've done lots of podcasts, and before then it was radio. I haven't done radio in a long time. Podcasts have taken over radio, which is fine by me. Radio's dead. I love podcasts. Yeah. So let's do it. So everyone listening, if you're driving in your car, you really want two hands for this. So, move to the side of the road, or don't do it. Exactly. Yeah. Be safe, please. So let's start, and let's start by picking, when we're tapping, it's about what we want to work on. I've mentioned a couple things. I mentioned procrastination. I mentioned pain. If you're feeling physical pain in your body right now, tapping is so powerful on that topic. I wrote a whole book about it because it works so well on physical pain. So choose that. If you're not in pain, pick something that's just been gnawing at you, something you're stressed out about, that you're angry about or anxious about. And try to be as specific as possible. We don't want to start by saying, well, I'm stressed out about my whole life and everything that's gone wrong. We want to try to get to a particular challenge that we're facing right now. So just take a moment to tune into that. And as you do so, see if you can give it a number of intensity on a scale of 0 to 10. So if you're angry about something, you might think about it and go, oh, that anger is so strong, it's an 8. If you feel pain in your body, just give it a number. Okay. And this can be a physical pain, an emotion. Wonderful. So you are tapping with us. Perfect. Yeah. So, Tony, you've got your thing and you've got your number?
Yeah, I got my thing on my number, yeah.
All right. And I'm going to use very general language here because I don't know what everyone listening is particularly focused on. Just repeat the language. It will likely work for you. And if it doesn't, you can just change it up. And we start by tapping on the side of the hand. It's called the karate chop point. It's below the pinky on the outside of the hand. You want to take 4 fingers of one hand to tap on the other. And you're just tapping as if you were drumming on a table. You can go really at whatever pace that you want. You can tap slowly or tap quickly, whatever pace feels right for you. And we're tapping continuously, focusing on that issue, thinking about it, and then repeat after me. And Tony, will you be my echo as we go along?
Yes, with pleasure. Yeah, although I'm kind of getting quite sucked into this.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I might just kind of forget to be your echo, but I'll try my best.
All right. So tapping on the side of the hand, even though I'm holding on to all the stress in my body
even though I'm holding on to all this stress in my body
around this issue. I choose to relax and feel safe now.
I choose to relax and feel safe now.
And we're still tapping on the side of the hand. We're going to say two more statements like that. Even though I'm holding on so tight.
Even though I'm holding on so tight.
And I don't want to let this stress go.
And I don't want to let this stress go.
I choose to relax now.
I choose to relax now.
And one more time, and just focusing on that issue. I know you're trying to figure out the tapping, and that's okay. Don't worry about getting it perfect. Tapping along, thinking about this issue, this stressor, and just say, even though I'm holding on.
Even though I'm holding on.
And I can't seem to let this go.
And I can't seem to let this go.
I choose to relax now.
I choose to relax now.
And now we're going to tap through the points. I'll describe them to you and just do your best with them. The first point is the eyebrow point. It's on the inside of the eyebrow, right where the hair ends and it meets the nose. And you can tap with 2 fingers of one hand, the other hand, or both hands down both sides of the body. Those meridians run down both sides of the body. You're just tapping gently and just say out loud, this stress.
This stress.
Now we go to the side of the eye. It's not at the temple, a little further in, right next to the eye, on the bone, this stressful issue.
This stressful issue.
And now we go under the eye, again, one side or both sides, right on the bone, thinking about this issue, and just say, this stressful issue.
This stressful issue.
And now we go under the nose, tapping gently. And don't worry about saying anything right now. I want you to just think about this thing, however that comes up. So if there's pain in your body, just be present to that pain now. If you're anxious about something or you're angry about something someone said or did, run that movie. If it's something in the past, see it happening in the past. If it's something you're worried about in the future, imagine it in the future. Now let's move under the mouth to the chin point. It's actually above the chin, below the lip, in that little crease there, tapping with 2 fingers. And just feel these feelings. Run this movie. For the next point, we go to the collarbone. If you feel for the 2 little bones of the collarbone, and you go down an inch, out to each side about an inch. I like to tap with all 10 fingers, both hands. Feeling grounded in the body and just running this movie again. We are actually trying to activate this amygdala. We're trying to activate the stress response, not to lock it in, but to turn it off. This is how we sort of short circuit this brain response. And you might start noticing that that's starting to happen now, that as you start to think of this movie, maybe it feels a little further away or not as powerful. As you tune into the pain in your body, maybe it's less or it's shifting, or other ideas or emotions are coming up. Just be present to them. And now we go underneath the arm, 3 inches underneath the armpit, right on the bra line for women, either side of the body, and just run that movie again and notice what comes up. You know, sometimes we start tapping on one thing and we think about other things. That's okay. That could be a clue that they are connected. Now the last point, right at the top of the head, on the crown, tapping gently, running this movie again. And let's do a couple more rounds back to the eyebrow. And just say out loud, I wonder what this is all about.
I wonder what this is all about.
Side of the eye. And I wonder why I can't let it go.
And I wonder why I can't let it go.
Under the eye, or maybe I can.
Or maybe I can.
Under the nose. Feeling present to these emotions.
Feeling present to these emotions.
Under the mouth, to these feelings in my body.
To these feelings in my body.
Collarbone, and starting to let them go.
And starting to let them go.
Under the arm, what if I could let this go?
What if I could let this go?
Top of the head, what if I could release this issue?
What if I could release this issue?
Back to the eyebrow, feeling safe, letting it go.
Feeling safe, letting it go.
Side of the eye, feeling safe and grounded in my body.
Feeling safe and grounded in my body.
Under the eye, letting this go.
Letting this go.
Under the nose, letting it go.
letting it go.
Under the mouth, from every cell in my body.
From every cell in my body.
Collarbone, right now.
Right now.
And just stay on the collarbone and just tap there for a few seconds, feeling grounded in your body. As you notice that it lets go more and more, you might start feeling other things come up, other positive emotions. One of the powerful things about tapping is that we don't have to make up these positive feelings or emotions. When we let go of what's in our way, these other positive feelings, these ideas, these memories, these empowering thoughts just come up naturally. They strengthen by themselves. And just as you tap on the collarbone, notice that happening now. If you are anxious about something in the future, maybe now this picture looks different. Maybe you were going to give a speech and you're anxious, and now you're seeing yourself strong and confident and comfortable and having fun. Maybe you were angry about something someone said or did, and now you see yourself forgiving them, letting them go, letting the whole thing go. Maybe you were worried about your body, physical pain, or a disease you've been struggling with, and now you just notice how your body feels stronger and healthier from just a few minutes of this process. Tapping on the collarbone, notice these feelings. Notice that strength and confidence in your body, and just lock it in. Lock it in and know that you can carry this feeling forward through the rest of this conversation, through the rest of your day, through the rest of your week, your month, your year. Knowing that you have that strength within you to allow your body to heal, to let go, to create what you most want in your life. Feeling strong and grounded, you can gently stop tapping and tune back in now. So that was a few rounds of tapping, and Tony, you don't have to share what you were working on, but how did your number shift? Where was it, and what is it now?
Yeah, I felt an almost instant release of kind of tension that I wasn't really even aware that was there before, but it was. And then it went. And I feel like probably a lot of people would, because there's something about your body is just kind of like, what's all this tapping going on? It's kind of weird. Maybe I need to focus on that and just let go of all the other stuff.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Well,
thank you for that.
And I love that you notice that release of tension. It happens so often we don't realize we're walking around with all this tension, and then we start doing it and go, oh my gosh, because it becomes the new normal, right? We get used to being a certain level of stress, and the real challenge too is when we get so used to being stressed or anxious or overwhelmed or whatever it is, that becomes our baseline feeling. And if we become too comfortable with that, then that just becomes our reality. It's like, oh, this is just the way life is. I think the tapping opens up that door to going, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. And boy, look at this tension the stress that I was walking around with that I didn't even notice.
Yeah. And, there's all kinds of cases. You mentioned stress before, and there's always these stats. They say that, 80% of doctors' visits wouldn't happen if people weren't stressed. But it probably is about that, actually.
Yeah, look, I know in my own life that if I come down with a quote-unquote cold or virus or something, I can easily point to lack of sleep or busyness or stress. And yes, sometimes I don't tap and I'm not perfect and I forget and get overwhelmed and go, but I usually can nip it in the bud, that I start feeling, my throat glands feel a little swollen. There's something here, right? There's an input. Yes, that cold virus is real, and that bacterial infection is a real thing, but it is exacerbated by this stress. And, I don't know all the details of your story, but I'm sure that the travel, that, yes, there was a virus, but it was, and you had to travel and you were probably busy and maybe you had a cocktail or two, or,
yeah, you're right about that. Yeah.
Right. And then it all adds up to weaken your body. And that's when that quote unquote virus was able to do its thing.
Yeah. And over the last few years, and I'm very lucky in that I get to do this podcast. It's almost like, I mean, you know, from a purely selfish perspective, this feels like a half-hour therapy session with you,
Yes.
Nick, even though other people are listening as well. But over the last 3 years, the layers of the onion have unpeeled, and I've realised that actually I was living a very, I wouldn't necessarily call it stress, but I call it an overstimulated life.
Yes.
Just on the go and busy and over-ambitious the whole time, masking the fact that actually I needed to do some work and just relax a little bit. And
I love that you made that distinction, because that's a really interesting one. The difference between, you know, stressed, and people go, oh, stressed, and overstimulated, because overstimulated is just, that's what we're all dealing with. So, you know, recognizing that fact, and that can contribute to stress, and that can be, you know, a different challenge in and of itself, I think is a really powerful distinction.
So what about you, Nick? One of the questions that I ask everyone, there's two questions I ask everyone in this podcast, and that is, what one book would you recommend, and one tip for living with more energy, vitality, and motivation? I wonder, listeners, whether it will be something to do with tapping.
I know. It's such a layup, right? The tip is tap, right?
Tap. Okay, cool. We got that one out of the way. That's fine.
However you do it, whether you do it with, you know, my books and material or anybody else, the technique works. Find a way to explore it. Literally any challenge that you're facing in your life right now, it's going to help you. And I won't be so self-serving with the book. So let me think.
I mean, it can be any book. It could be a book. It could be a fiction book, or just a book that's resonated with you. It might be something to do with, you know, meridians and energy lines and acupuncture and tapping, or it might not be at all. It really doesn't matter. We just had some really interesting answers, and I'm a bit of a book geek myself, so I'm always interested in hearing what people have got to say.
I wish I could send you a picture. You'd love my bookcase. I have built an office in the backyard because I have a 2.5-year-old, so I was not able to get anything done inside the house. So there's a wooden, you know, reclaimed barn bookcase, like it's a whole wall, which is just like,
that's awesome. Will you send me a picture afterwards, and I'll put it in the show notes? And I'll send you a picture of my bookcase in return.
It's the best, right? I love it. So looking around, and I've got my Kindle here. Well, I'll tell you what's open on my desk right now. So this is an old book, and it is actually, let me see when it was published. The first paperback edition was 1990. The copyright was 1985. The book is called Life Energy, Using the Meridians to Unlock the Hidden Power of Your Emotions. And the author is John Diamond, MD. And John Diamond was actually, you know, this book is one of the sort of grandfathers of tapping. So I've really enjoyed it. I've read it before, and I've been going back into it, and every other page is dog-eared and highlighted, because I've really enjoyed going back into it and looking at some of the information around the meridians in the body, and specifically what emotions are, you know, every meridian runs. I haven't spent too much energy in that in the last decade, because I've sort of felt like, hey, let's learn the basics and not confuse things. But people ask me questions about it all the time. So that is what is folded up on my bookcase. And
very cool.
Open in my Kindle right now is the latest Ken Follett book, A Column of Fire. I don't know if you're a Ken Follett fan.
I've never read any. I have heard of him, but I've never read any Ken Follett.
Ken Follett. This is the trilogy. In the first one was The Pillars of the Earth, then A World Without End. I don't know which one actually was first. And right now, the time period is 1550 or so, and Queen Elizabeth has just risen to the throne, and Mary Stuart is in France. And it is bringing things that I paid no attention to in high school, clearly, because I don't remember any of them. And really what they should do for high school kids is give them these novels, because it brings it to life and gives you context. So it's historical fiction. You know, what Follett usually does is takes real life events and creates a character around it, so that, you know, might have existed. So it gives you dialogue and drama and context. And that is what I'm reading right now.
That's really, do you know, this is very exciting, because I basically love historical fiction, and I'm a bit obsessed by it. And and I feel like I've read all the books of all the authors that I love in historical fiction. So I'm going to investigate Ken Follett. In fact, I just Googled him. And if you want one in return, Robert Harris. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he also writes excellent historical fiction, which I think you might write. He wrote an especially good one on Pompeii. So
okay,
there's a good one for you as well.
All right,
yeah,
good trade. No, Ken Follett's incredible. He has a lot of books, but there's the trilogy I'm reading right now, and then there's also the Century trilogy, which is the 20th century, so World War I, World War II, and then the aftermath, again told in this, in this way. And boy, it brought the 20th century to life in a way that I'd never experienced.
Why have I never heard of? Well, I have heard of him, but I've never kind of even considered reading his books.
You need to follow up with me, and they're huge, so you also have a lot of pages, and let me know what you think.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Well, I'm really quite excited about our bookshelf photo exchange.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
I've got a nasty feeling that yours might be bigger than mine.
I also have a big TV in the middle,
okay.
So yeah.
I can't say I've got that as well. But look, it's really been great to chat to you, Nick. Thank you so much. Where can people find out everything about what you do, the tapping solution, the documentary, and everything else?
Great, yeah. The starting point is thetappingsolution.com, and that's where you can sign up for the first 2 chapters of my first book for free, and there's tons of free resources on there. Make sure to get on our email list, because that's where a lot of the fun new stuff happens. And then you mentioned Facebook. That's just N Ortner on Facebook, where I do a lot of Facebook Lives. So, if you like the page there, you might find that I pop up in your news feed a week from now, and we can do some tapping together. And then the other place where I hang out, which is mostly pictures of my 2.5-year-old, is Instagram, and that's just at Nick Ortner on Instagram.
Great. Do you still do you have got a podcast as well, haven't you?
I do. Yeah. There's the Tapping Solution podcast.
I listen to your podcast sometimes.
It's bits and pieces. It's not in this format. We'll take a tapping meditation or an interview or just sort of chunks of content and deliver them in that way, as opposed to the conversations. And it's but it's a nice little thing to get some free resources through. Yeah,
definitely. Well, really great to chat, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on. I do appreciate it. If you ever want anyone to provide testimonials for how incredible tapping in your work is, then I'm happy to do it, because I'm really passionate that more people find out about it. So just bear that in mind if you need me.
No, please. Maybe I'll have to find my way to London, and we'll go to a QPR game, and
I really wouldn't want to inflict that on you, Nick. That would be
all right. We'll go to Spurs then. We'll go to Spurs. We'll go to Wembley.
We'll go to QPR.
yeah.
But if you did that, we'll organise. We do quite a few live events in London as well, and we get some great guests for them, and we would get a big crowd for you, Nick. So that'd be absolutely brilliant if you did come.
That sounds good. We'll put it in the calendar.
We'll do it in the boardroom at QPR. It'd be brilliant.
I love it.
All right. Cheers, Nick. Take care. Thank you again.
Take care.
And thank you very much to Nick Ortner. I am still stuck in traffic in central London. So there you go. But I can just tap it out and I'll feel okay, more relaxed and less stressed about it all. As always, if you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to share it with someone else, that would be brilliant. And specifically, if you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to listen to another podcast on tapping, well, I would be, as you've already heard, be quite passionate about you kind of getting a bit more involved and finding out a bit more about how it could help you. And if you look at podcast 105, Zestology 105 with Ashley Meyer, Ashley is my practitioner, who, as I said in this podcast, I don't really see him anymore, but for quite a few years he's had quite an impact on my life. And well, you might even want to look him up. When he came on Zestology a while back, this is really gratifying. He got loads of new clients from coming on, which was great, and he emailed me to say thank you, which I was very pleased about and not surprised, because as I said to Nick, I think probably the most important thing in being a practitioner of whatever you are a practitioner about is the fact that you are an intuitive healer who has a kind of kind manner that can help someone heal. Then, whatever you're doing, that's important too. Same whether you're a conventional doctor or anything, or a shaman or anything else. So enjoy listening to that podcast. Thanks for listening to Zestology. Hopefully I'll be out of my car quite soon. Really hoping on that one. No idea how this sounds. Might sound like I'm in a very tinny box, but there you go. And I'll see you next time.